Okay, you're going to be filling in your own notes as you're watching the video, and I would just also say that some colored pencils will help with this as well as we go today. I just think it makes it a little bit easier to make sense of this. So we can see there's lots of arrows because we know that any type of rock can turn into any other type. So let's go ahead and we're going to fill that in right here. So any type of rock can turn into another. So make sure you're filling this in here. So any type of rock can turn into another type. And so we can see that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about the three main types of rock, which is what we've been learning about. And then we'll fill these in as we go today. So our first one is going to be an igneous rock. And under here, let's go ahead and just so we all know how this type of rock is formed. Remember, igneous rock is created from cooling of magma or lava. And you certainly can turn and color this in as you go. All right, and then let's go to a second type of rock, which is sedimentary rock. And we have learned that sedimentary rock is created from the deposit or deposition of sediment over long periods of time. So we'll talk about ways that this rock might get formed. All right, and then our last type of rock is metamorphic rock. It's over here. And we know metamorphic is rock that, so existing rock is subject to very high heat and pressure. So heat and pressure really are how metamorphic rocks form. So it's changing. It doesn't melt completely, but is a way that we can do that. All right, and then we can see all these arrows. And so what we want to talk about is we know that igneous rock is formed from magma or lava, right? So if we think about how a sedimentary rock could become an igneous rock, then this arrow right here, we know it has to melt. So this arrow here, we're going to label is melting. And on mine, what I want to do is actually color code kind of some of these so I can see really clearly. So I'm going to show this melting as red so that I know this meant kind of fire or hot, which will help make sense for me. So I'm going to color, anytime I see melting, I'm going to color that red. And then if we think about a metamorphic rock, we know igneous rock also, anytime it's forming igneous rock, it has to melt. So this arrow here, I'm also going to write melting on. And I'm also going to be coloring that red, again, to show that is hot, and that is how we form igneous rock. So igneous rock then is these rocks need to melt, and then the igneous rock will form as it cools. We can form that type of rock. And then if I look at, we know that metamorphic rock is heat and pressure. So how do I go from an igneous rock to metamorphic rock? Well, that's going to be heat and pressure. So heat plus pressure is how we make a metamorphic rock. And I'm going to choose a different color here. I'm going to use green just to show that maybe this is some pressure. But again, I'm kind of just color coding these so I can see how these rocks are formed. So igneous rock, I can make a metamorphic by providing heat and pressure, which is going to change that rock into a metamorphic rock. And if I think about a sedimentary rock becoming metamorphic, well, it's the same thing, right? It's going to be heat and pressure. So sedimentary rock, again, we're going to add down here heat and pressure. And heat and pressure is how I make a metamorphic rock. So again, I'm going to color code this so that I can actually make sense. Now, if sedimentary rock is created from sediment, well, we've learned that sedimentary sediments are formed from weathering, erosion, and deposition. So I'm going to go ahead and just use our WED acronym that we've been talking about. So igneous rock, any type of igneous, as long as it's weathered, erosion, deposition, that forms sediments, and so I can change this type of rock into a sedimentary rock. And to show this one, I'm going to show sediments as kind of a yellow color. And again, I'm just using different color to show these different processes because there's a lot of arrows going on here. And if I think about metamorphic, it also, to turn into sedimentary rock, I need to weather it, erode it, deposition as well, and then I can color code this. All right. So let's just remind ourselves up here, there's lots of ways that we can form sediment. And so one way that we can do that, you guys can think to yourself, how do we form sediment? Well, we can weather it, whether that's chemical or mechanical weathering. We know that erosion can form sediments. We know that that deposition is going to deposit it. And I would just say also that also can then be compacted. So compaction and cementation. Okay, so these are all ways that we can form that sediment, which becomes really important for that sedimentary rock. And your teacher can probably show you real examples, and one thing that you're going to be doing is getting real examples. But I just wanted to write down some examples of each type of sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous rock. So some classic sedimentary rock is something called shale. Most of you have probably heard of limestone. And when big chunks cement together, we can call that a conglomerate. So something that this, for example, would be a conglomerate. You can see all the big pieces in there. Okay, metamorphic is something called gneiss. It has a G. That G is silent. Marble, and in marble, if you have marble anything, you can actually see the waves in that. And then also schist is a classic metamorphic. All right, and then pumice is an igneous rock. It's very light. It has lots of air in it, so it's a very light rock. Obsidian, and finally granite is also formed from that. Okay, with your time left, just remember any type of rock can form into anything else given the right conditions. The three major ways, or really four, is melting and cooling, heat and pressure, and then weathering, erosion, and deposition. Those are really the different ways that rocks can change. With your time, I would love to see you can start coloring in down here the rock cycle. You can color around, anything you want to do with that, but that is an example of the rock cycle.